Welcome to our Q&A.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our first Q&A. This one is going to be about how we met. I'm from America.
I'm from Scotland.
Actually, we should introduce ourselves. I'm Sarah. I'm a full-time artist. I'm originally from America. I lived in Denver for 10 years before I moved to Scotland. On to you.
What?
Introduce yourself.
I'm Sean. I'm Scottish.
This is my husband, Sean. He isn't used to talking to the camera.
Ever.
And I'm only used to it because I make art videos and I have streamed. So that really got me used to it, even though it's still really weird. Anyways, who are you?
Sean.
Where did you grow up?
I'm Sean, and I've lived in just about every part of Scotland and a wee bit of Ireland as well. But mostly in cities, until you dragged me out to the countryside and I fell in love with it.
Yeah. So what do you do for a living now? I'm
a branch manager at an electrical wholesaler.
What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Not that.
So the main topic of this is how we met and why I'm here, why I'm in Scotland. So, and for anybody who already knows most of the story, you're going to hear it again in detail. For those of you who don't know the story, buckle in for, it's almost like out of a movie. A lot of people tell us our story is like listening to a movie plot or something.
It felt like it.
Yeah, it did. It still does. I want to preface this by just saying, before we met, I was in a very transitional time in my life, very emotionally transitional. And out of respect for everyone in my life and past relationships, I don't want to go into any detail about all of that. So our journey starts in 2000.
Just all I could think of was Dave Chappelle. His difference between guys and girls is with guys, when they're telling a story, it's facts. It's who, what, when, where, why. But with women, it's usually, oh, well, first of all, you have to understand, I was on my period, and I just talked to my mother, so it was very...
Oh my god. I'm going to have to cut out so much in this video. So yeah, I had just turned 80. So yeah, it was a very transitional time, a time of intense self-discovery. I had just turned 31, so Saturn's return and all of that. So I just want to... Our story begins in 2016. Do you want to start or do you want me to? In January 2016, I flew to Scotland for the first time, but I spent some time in Aberdeen, Inverness, Oban, Isle of Skye, just kind of traveling around by train. And I sort of spontaneously booked a ticket to go down to London the day after my birthday and got on the train that day, and somehow we just happened to get into the same train car. You weren't even meant to be on that train.
No. I had basically been looking for a new car. Desperately wanted a Volvo. And I had found one probably the week or 2 weeks before that. But yeah, basically the guy texted me the day before I was supposed to go down and said, oh, I've sold the car. And of course I was calling him all the dicks under the sun and just, what an absolute But, yeah, 2 weeks later I found one in Doncaster, so...
Which is 4 hours south of Aberdeen.
Yeah,
so
no, it's about 6 hours. Yeah, found the new car.
Booked a ticket.
Was so basically just desperate to get it that I booked the quickest ticket that I could possibly get to get down to Doncaster. And
happened to be the same day as I did.
Yeah.
On my spontaneous ticket.
I saw her getting onto the train.
You did?
Putting your bags.
I don't remember you telling me that.
Putting your bags away.
I didn't have an assigned seat on the train. You have to pay extra for that. So I just was I'll just move around if someone gets on and needs my seat. If we were sitting on the train right now, there would be a table in front of us and then 2 people across from us. So more and more people got on the train and I kept having to move, and I finally just went and sat in his section at his table. But I was across from him, kind of kitty corner.
My version of that is basically that she spotted me and then stalked me like a lioness.
No. I was listening to my headphones. I was chatting with my friends on Discord at the time. So when I finally sat at his table, I was like, kind of eyeing him. I was like, he looked exactly like Wolverine. Hence the nickname Wolfy. That stuck forever. And I immediately... Well, okay, so I took a photo of him without him knowing. I'll pop it up on the screen right now. It's super blurry and awful. But I took a photo of him and I sent it to my friends. It's like, look, I'm sitting next to Wolverine. But we were both on our headphones, so we weren't talking to each other or really like looking at each other.
I mean, I remember sitting there watching One Punch Man.
Yeah, he was watching anime on his phone.
Yeah.
And I was sketching on a newspaper, I think.
I think I saw you draw some stuff on some of the papers. And I think I remember one of them looking like Spyro.
Yeah, I was drawing dragons or foxes or fox dragons. I don't know. My friends in Discord were like, take off your headphones and talk to him. And finally, I took my headphones off and shortly after you did too. And I broke the ice. I was like, are you headed to London? But he told me what he was doing. And then we just got talking and we talked like nonstop the whole time.
Yeah, she even followed me to the food.
Different carts of the train have different things. So I followed him down to the other cart that had the food vendor, whatever they call them.
Not cart.
But immediately we just were talking nonstop about anime, about cartoons and video games and sci-fi and fantasy, like all the things we love. And I told him I was an artist and a streamer. And I went, okay. Yeah, I told him I was an artist.
What's your real job?
Yeah. What's your real job?
I mean, I thought you would have like, you would be working at like Asda.
Yeah, he didn't really think full-time artists were a thing, basically. Like, no one does that. What are you talking about? You didn't see it till you went home and looked it up.
And then, because she gave me her card, so when I went home, I looked it up and I was like, oh shit. She's actually an artist. Okay.
So he had to get off the train, obviously, at his stop, and I gave him my card, and he... Did you ask if you could hug me, or did you just hug me?
No, I just hugged you.
Yeah, he just hugged me. It was so cute.
She was just enamored with the accent. That was all.
No. No, my first thought was, your eyes are beautiful. And then, of course, once I finally talked to you, I was like, his accent is adorable. But I had been in Scotland, and I knew Scottish people, and so it wasn't, like, brand new to me.
Yeah, but you'd been in Aberdeen, and I don't have an Aberdonian accent.
But it was just also because we kept talking about so many things. Like, we obviously had so much in common, and we just talked nonstop. And, yeah, it was just easy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he emailed me that night, so I got his email really late, and then we exchanged phone numbers and just texted every day, not like pretty whenever much. We got a chance, just texted all the time. But from London, I flew to Oslo, Norway. I was in Norway, and then I went to Sweden, and then Germany, and then finally Denmark. And the whole time we had been texting and video chatting now and then. Yeah, so I told him I was going to be in Copenhagen for a few days before flying back to the U.S. for like, who knows if I'd ever come back.
Yeah, I was just like, well, would you mind some company at the last place that you're at?
And I was like, actually, that would be pretty awesome, because I obviously knew we had clicked and we were getting along, and I was really attracted to him and he was attracted to me. So he came to visit me. We stayed together in Copenhagen and just like immediately just hit it off completely. Instantly felt so easy and comfortable, and it was so sad because we knew we only had a few days, so we were just trying to make the most of it. We went did tons of sightseeing, and I had this moment during Copenhagen.
You had a panic attack, like walking down the street, and then when we got back to the hotel, I licked your forehead.
So weird.
And you were like, but you were instantly out of panic attack mode.
So at that time I was going through like extreme emotional stuff, long story. But I had a panic attack or two along my journeys, and I just happened to be with you during one of them, and like I think you just thought that the only way I can snap her out of it, make it pause maybe, was to do something weird. He licked my forehead, and I just was so shocked that it really did like bring me back down to earth, into my body again, and I was able to like finally start calming down, and it's so weird. So yeah, now it's a thing. Like I haven't had any panic attacks since moving here, so we haven't had to do that again. But Yeah, when we were in Copenhagen, one night we just ordered Chinese and stayed in the hotel, and we watched, or he put on this movie called What We Do in the Shadows.
It was a test.
I didn't know. And I was blown away. This movie is hilarious, and it's one of my favorites now. And I don't think you knew at the time, but I was a huge Flight of the Conchords fan. And,
yeah, I didn't know that.
And one of the actors is in this movie, so it was just so serendipitous and hilarious, and now it's our ritual. So every day on our anniversary of watching that, we watch it again. And I think that was the time when I was like, don't fall in love with me. I want to be alone. I need to be alone.
I'm a strong, independent woman, and I don't need no man.
I just didn't want to be with anyone. I was like going through so much, and it doesn't matter what you want. Like, I couldn't fight it. So shortly after I flew back to Denver, we basically decided to be a couple, but I was still resisting. Like, I just kept thinking like, no, this is too fast, this is too random, and like it really was. But at the same time, I'm very intuitive and I follow my intuition, and my intuition was telling me to follow this, so I did. We obviously knew there was something there, and we were chatting and video chatting constantly, which was a huge challenge because Scotland is 7 hours ahead of Denver.
Well, it depends.
Depends on the time of year. Yeah. It can be 8 hours ahead, but it was a big time difference. Yeah. So we had to plan it. But we did like Skype dates. So I would be having breakfast or lunch, and he would be having dinner, and we would dress up, and we would have dinner or have our date together on Skype.
Yeah, I would suit up.
Yeah, he suited up. You know, my heart was hurting so much because I wanted to be with him. And
so basically I went over to visit in May of 2016 for 2 weeks, which was the first time we physically saw each other since Copenhagen. We went around Denver. We went to up to Hanging Lake and some really fun hikes, and that was fun.
He was dying.
It wasn't fun.
And we drove to Utah, and we stayed at this amazing tent camping place.
There's two amazing places.
It's just an epic place. When he visited me, he saw me painting outside. Like, I painted a lot every time we went somewhere. And one of the questions you guys asked is how he deals with it when I'm painting. Like, when we go hiking, I sit down and paint for a while. Like, what does he do? Or how do you deal with it?
Well, basically, I just grab my phone and take random videos.
Yeah, like he'll photograph me or video me sometimes, and a lot of times he'll wander around and go look at things.
Yeah, I mean,
he goes off into his own world sometimes.
Yeah.
You love being in nature, so it's not like he's there like complaining or against his will the whole time.
I mean,
he loves it.
I grew up in cities, like,
now you finally
my
get
whole
to
life.
Experience nature, and
yeah, it's good for the soul. Everybody should
doing nothing in nature is also good for your soul. So anyways, he visited me for a few weeks, and then he flew back to Scotland, and at that time we definitely knew we wanted to be together, and we were looking at options. So like, he obviously had just visited me, and I looked at the option to visit Scotland again and realized that at the time you could come to Scotland for 6 months without any special visas or anything. You could be here for 6 months. So I booked a ticket to come back to Scotland in October, and that time, knowing that I would be here for 6 months, we had to start figuring out like where we would live, because we weren't gonna, like, I wasn't going to move in with him, and he was living with his mom at that time. So he started looking for apartments in Inverness, because we both knew we loved Inverness. And thankfully, he found a place. And by the time I was on the plane coming over, he was just moved in. Oh, and at that time, you were transitioning jobs. So everything's just kind of aligned. I arrived on the plane and moved into our apartment together, and it was so surreal.
Yeah.
And like, people often ask me like what I was feeling at that time. Was I scared? Was I thinking like, oh my God, what have I done? But no, like, it was very weird, but it felt so natural. It was just weird because I was in a new country, like, people drive on the other side of the road here. There's different foods and different words for things, and there's different currency, and I was very far away from my friends and family, but we were together, which felt very easy and natural and fun. And I was in this beautiful place. I'm an artist, so I'm very inspired by my surroundings. And like I was instantly inspired everywhere I went.
I was worried that because you were so far away from your friends and family, I was worried that you would eventually just want to ditch Scotland.
Oh, so you mean like have us move over there? I mean, we talked about it. We looked at options for him coming over to America, but I just knew I wasn't done in Scotland yet. Like, it was easier for me, for my job, to be working from anywhere. I'm an independent artist and photographer, so I can be anywhere and make a living. And
I mean, I can pretty much pick up any job anyway, but at the same time...
But I work for myself, whereas you were working for other people at the time. Right before I moved to Scotland for my 6-month stay, I sold my car. I put all my stuff in storage. Like, I knew I'd have to come back in 6 months, and I would figure it all out then.
Yeah, we kind of just did it.
Yeah, we just jumped in.
We're just going to do it.
I mean, we just knew we loved each other, and we didn't know what that meant besides we loved each other. Like, we wanted to try being together.
Even if it hadn't have worked out, then you would have gone home after the 6 months and known, and
yeah,
I would have still stayed in Inverness because I wanted to live in Inverness anyway. I didn't want to live in Inverness.
Like, hearts would have been broken if if it hadn't worked out, but we knew we at least needed to try.
Yeah, because we
felt so strongly.
There was something very much there.
Yeah.
We called it quantum entanglement.
You called it quantum entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, huh? What?
Quantum entanglement. 2 particles that are interconnected across a vast distance and will eventually meet.
It's destined that they'll meet? Essentially.
It's the scientific description of destiny.
I mean, that's a good line.
That was pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, and it was during my 6 months here that we realized how easy it is to live together. And I mean, obviously, anytime you're in a new couple or a new situation, there's things to get used to. And some of the questions you guys asked, like, who's messier? When I was here for that first 6 months, we did a ton of exploring.
Lots and lots of it.
Every weekend. I
saw more of Scotland in that 6 months than I had in my entire life.
Yeah, it was amazing. And we also did a road trip to Bruges and Amsterdam. I have 2 other videos that I'll share with you guys about that. I had to leave in April the following year, so April 2017. And it was just like this, I was dreading it because like I loved our life together. I loved living here. I just was like so worried about leaving. We were constantly talking about the future. We were talking about long-term future. And he proposed to me in February that year. At that point, we had already kind of started looking at the visa thing, figuring out our options, which was a whole headache.
I wouldn't wish the visa process in this country on my worst enemy. It's so unbelievably invasive, financially draining.
Yeah.
You're essentially trying to start up a life with somebody, and you're starting off in a deficit because
it's thousands and thousands of pounds.
Yeah. Not just for the visa, but then if you want to make sure that you're doing it properly and you go through a lawyer, then you have the fees that you've got to pay through that.
I think I may make a whole separate video about the visa stuff, so if you guys have any questions, you can ask. When I went back to Denver in April, that was when our visa process kind of started. Oh, so yeah, and when I went back to Denver, I didn't know how long I was going to be gone because I didn't know how long the visa process would take. So we were still sharing our apartment in Inverness and sharing expenses for that until you got a roommate for a little while. But I was living in Denver having my own expenses, so it just became like more expensive. And we thought maybe it'd be 3 months or 4 months, and no, it ended up being 8 months to get the visa. And it was a fiance visa. And during that summer, you visited Denver again. And my dad visited Denver at the same time. So my dad met you.
Yeah.
And approved.
Yeah.
And they're both musicians, which is really great. They have like that stuff they can share. But they got along so well. It was so cute. So yeah, you were with me in Denver for a little while. We went camping and we did so many fun things. It was great. If you can physically see each other, even if it's every few months, Like, it helps so much.
4 months apart or
yeah,
something.
we had gone from April to September with no physical seeing each other in person. And that was so hard. He was only in Denver for a couple weeks, and then he went back to Scotland, and then I finally got my visa approved in December. I got my visa after all this time. This is amazing. The day I got my visa, I booked a ticket to come back to Scotland as early as possible. And during that summer, I had like been slowly selling off all of my belongings, running my art business from like the bare minimum. And I had also moved 3 times during that summer. I moved from like my friend's apartments, my basement, to my other friend's house, to my other friend's house, and it was just like a whole thing. Exhausting. Emotionally exhausting. Knowing that I was coming back to Scotland permanently was what helped me get through each night. I shoved everything I had into like 5 suitcases. I had to pay hundreds of dollars extra for the baggage fees because I was overweight on my bags and had an extra bag. But it was like, you know, you're moving your whole life to a new country.
You took the braver step than I did.
It didn't feel like it really. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to be brave. I just felt like I knew I needed to be with you, and I just had to figure out the steps to do it. Once you get the visa, that's not the end of the visa thing. That was just the beginning, basically. So finally, at the end of 2017, I was in Scotland permanently, and we were like kind of able to plan our life together. Because of the visa, we actually had to prove we were getting married, so it turned into a small wedding.
We had like this much of a window to actually get married.
We realized like, oh, they're requiring us to like prove we're doing it, and you know, we ended up doing like a very small wedding.
Tiny.
And
13 people,
including
you and me.
Yeah. After my moving expenses and the visa expenses and having, 2 apartments basically for a whole half of a year, like all my savings were drained. We were just like so stretched thin financially. So like there was no way we could afford a big wedding.
Our wedding was perfect though.
It was beautiful. It was so romantic. So I don't know if you can see on his ring, laser etched or engraved sound bite of my voice saying something. And on my ring, there's some Elvish script. He surprised me and got Elvish engraved. Oh,
yeah. So it's from her favorite story from the Silmarillion,
which, by the way, is by Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings. If you don't know, so nerdy stuff.
Yeah. Story about Luthien and Beren.
But do you remember what it says? We don't want to give them a history lesson of the Silmarillion.
It says, the sundering seas between them lay until at last they met once more.
I cried a lot when he told me that, when he showed me. Because that was like our experience. We were apart for so long. It was so hard. And finally we were together again, and it was just wonderful. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's funny, but it's kind of funny that our meeting anniversary, our engagement anniversary, and our wedding anniversary, all of those dates are in February, right around my birthday.
Yeah, it's not funny.
It is funny.
It's financially crippling.
No, it's not. I don't expect anything. Plus, the day we met was the day after my birthday.
Yeah.
It's easy to remember. I mean, you got all of the dates in a couple weeks. We may have answered some of these, but we're just going to jump into the Q&A. A lot of people ask why we chose Scotland and not the US when we got together, like after we got married and stuff. Like I said, my job is very movable. Like I can work from anywhere. And I am obsessed with Scotland and the beauty here. And some people asked if we ever plan on living anywhere else. Like, do we plan on going back to the US at some point? We're not going to just say flat out no. Maybe someday in the future we might. Because I have obviously all my friends and family there. Mm-hmm. Next question. What are your pet peeves about each other? I'll start.
I don't have any, so it was perfect.
No, you have to have at least one. Mine are, he's messy. He's not a morning person and I'm a morning person. So like when we go somewhere and I want to wake up at dawn and watch the sunrise, he's like in bed like... And the other one is that he makes me laugh even when I'm mad, which may not sound annoying, but it is when you're mad and you just want to rage and be like, rah! And he's like, making some face. Or sometimes he literally just looks at me with like a little smirk, I'll burst out laughing. Like, I can't. You have to have one pet peeve.
Sarah needs to know every single detail of every single... Like, if I say, right, we're going to go and do this thing on this date, so that's not enough. She needs to know the time. She needs to know how many people are going to be there. She needs to know probably what I'm going to be wearing, including, like, underwear. What colour it'll be and stuff.
I do not.
She needs to know how much
I like
how
details.
much fuel I intend to have in the car's tank, as well as
now
what PSI of the tires.
I have more if you want me to go.
Every single detail of every single plan, whereas my plans are just, they're not even plans. They are, I will do a thing on a date, and that will be the plan. And she'll come in to the kitchen while I'm cooking and start like telling me that I'm doing something the wrong way, when she has no idea what I'm cooking.
Most of the time it's an obvious thing, and I'm just trying to help you get better at one particular part of the cooking. Okay, basically I can't be in the kitchen when he cooks because I like want to take over completely. I can't help it, but I love when you cook. It's so nice. Next question. What is the weirdest thing you love about each other? It's maybe not necessarily super weird, but hear me out. He is so compassionate towards animals, and I love that. I think it's so sweet, but it's to the point, like, he's way more compassionate about animals than he is people. But it's to the point where, like, if he sees an injured seagull, one time he called me and he's like, I'm gonna be home late. How late? Very, like, several hours late. Why? Because I found a injured seagull. His wing is broken, and the closest animal hospital is like 3 hours away. Oh, okay. You know, he takes it to the extreme, but it's also so sweet. So I love that. It's sweet. It is a little weird, but it's not super weird.
Yeah, but there's a background to that as well. Like, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
My mum worked in a zoo.
You know, you got to be up close and personal with so many special animals.
Yeah, like 8, 9 years old, being face to face with a gorilla kind of changes your perspective.
That's amazing. The weirdest thing you love about me?
Well, I mean, Sarah is weird and wonderful. She just is. Everything about her, from her elven like nature. But the thing that we came up with for like the weirdest thing that I love about her, when she's watching like movies.
I'm a very emotional person.
Sarah
it's okay.
is a very emotional person, yet always insists on watching movies that will make her cry.
Yeah.
And when I say cry, I mean like blubber.
Like,
I mean,
sobbing. Like, full.
You know, proper sobbing.
Thanks.
Like, the thing that I love the most about that is basically when she's sitting next to me and she'll turn around to look at me and she'll be like...
Wow.
And what we mentioned earlier about me doing the things like when she's angry, I also do when she's crying. I make faces, or I just do things that will make her laugh. So the most recent example would have been Titanic.
I rewatch Titanic at least once a year.
She was
I love Kate Winslet. Whatever.
She was watching Titanic, and my God, the amount of times that it was
like every 10 minutes. You know, swimming in the sorrow and in the feelings, and
I wasn't watching the movie at all. She was watching it on her iPad. So every time I heard her sobbing, this was my solution. And so the sobbing was, it sort of went a bit like this. It was yeah, I love that. Like, she absolutely bawling her eyes out at these movies, but it doesn't matter because I can still make her chuckle and come out of it.
This question: how did you know your relationship would last through the long distance and moving to a new country?
We didn't.
Yeah, like I said, you never know. Yeah. But we knew we had to try.
Just like with anything, you've got your own gut instinct about how things feel.
And there's always going to be a voice of reason or another voice that's maybe telling you all the reasons you shouldn't do something. If you learn more about yourself and you are very intuitive, you kind of know the difference between the good and the bad voices.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, on top of that, like, you know, the fact that we actually made it through the long distance, that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
By a long shot was not being able to see each other and you know, only being able to see each other through a screen.
Yeah, and when it comes to living together, there's always going to be like pet peeves and little things. But if you are honest and forthcoming, I think those should go together.
100%.
You don't let things like just sit. You know, if something annoys you, you are blunt and you're honest. Like, we're very blunt. It's said with love and with good intentions.
Yeah.
And because he has like a very dark sense of humor, like he can take if I say you stink, it's not like he takes it personally, like, oh, she hates me. Like,
she recoils in disgust.
But you know, then he gets it. We both have a very good sense of humor.
Also, living in Scotland helps, because a lot of living in Scotland is, you know, if you are friends with someone, you slag them off.
That's something new for me. I'm still getting used to that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like the more you love someone, the more you make fun of them.
Yep.
But yeah, if you let any kind of annoyance or problem build up, it's just going to get worse. So always be forthcoming, be honest.
Honesty, yeah.
If the underlying love is there and appreciation for each other, and you tell each other how much you appreciate each other a lot, I think we do that really well. Like, I still, even after all this time, when he looks at me, like, I can see how much he appreciates me, and I hope you see that when I look at you. Now I'm gonna cry, though.
You're gonna cry?
I did.
You're gonna cry?
Because I think about how much I love you. Wait. Quickfire questions. How old are you?
33.
36. Who's the messiest? We obviously already answered that. Any Scottish store-bought treats or recipe recommendations? First, I'll say the things you can buy in the store. So, Iron Brew, Scottish tablet, macaroni pie.
Macaroni cheese in a pie.
In a flaky puff pastry pie. And, of course, sticky toffee pudding. Either buy these things or make them yourself, but you definitely have to try an original Scottish version if you can at some point.
Also, McCoy's crisps, I didn't realise weren't a thing.
Yeah,
all over the world.
McCoy's
are
crisps
are pretty solid. Like,
we will have to do a whole other video about the comparisons of American English and Scottish English, because there's like a million words and phrases that are different. Can Sarah do a Scottish accent? I can't do a Scottish accent. I can't. His face.
So no.
Alright, how you doing, mate? If you ever want to hear a Scottish accent and learn Scottish phrases and words, build up your ability to like hear Scottish accents, watch this show called Still Game. Two old guys living in Glasgow. So funny.
Just living old guy life.
Yeah, living old guy life. Someone asked me if I miss where I came from, which is the US. What I miss about it? Obviously, friends and family. I really miss Mexican food, like authentic Mexican food. That was amazing in Denver. And I miss sunshine. We get sunshine here, but Denver has over 300 days of sun a year. Did Sarah become a full-time artist after moving to Scotland? Are those events related? No, I was already a full-time artist and streamer and photographer before. How does your artistic career affect your relationship? Is it hard for Wolfy to keep up with my FOMO, fear of missing out, like running to the forest because the sunset's about to end? Is it hard for you?
Oh, really?
Does Wolfy ever give unsolicited critiques of my art? And if so, how do I deal with it?
I do.
Yeah, most of the times it's so annoying because he's like, everything I make he loves. Mm-hmm. Which is so nice, right? It's really nice. But at the same time, I sometimes genuinely want to know if like something could be improved or...
The critique that I give that she utterly hates is when I go, oh yeah, that kind of looks like SpongeBob SquarePants or, you know, something like that. And she's like...
I get why people do this, but like as a heads up, when you are telling someone you like their art, don't only say...
Don't say it looks like anybody else's.
Yeah, we don't want our art to look like anyone else's.
They'll get you punched in the face every time.
The most common one I get is people say, "Oh, that reminds me of Studio Ghibli," or the backgrounds on the anime. Which
that's a
I mean, that is a
God.
compliment, yeah. But at the same time, like, I want my own style. So
yeah, of course you do. You want your own style. It's fine, but you know, God, take the compliment. Like,
I think the last question is, was it difficult to learn how to drive on the other side of the road?
I think the hardest thing for you learning to drive on the left-hand side of the road was getting taught by me.
Yeah. It was easy to transition to driving on the left side of the road and shifting with my left hand. And actually, within a few months, I found I would be watching a movie or a TV show, seeing people drive on the other side of the road, and it looked so wrong. That switch happens kind of quickly. But the worst part was him teaching me, like, the rules of the road and all of that. And, like, to get your foreign license only lasts a year in Scotland, so within a year I had to get my UK license. It was a very different process than it was in the US for me. Like, the test here is much more strict, and you have very specific things you have to do, so you pretty much everyone here will get at least 1 or 2 driving lessons, if not many driving lessons. And at first I was just trying to have him teach me. Or, like, he would take me out to practice, like, parallel parking. And he is a nightmare. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. His friends, he's helped his other friends, and they all hate him. Tyrannical. So that was
Driving is important.
It is.
If you don't do it right, then you shouldn't be on the road.
But you don't have to be a dick about it.
No, you do. It essentially traumatizes your brain so that when you're driving...
To not ever want to speak to you again?
No, it traumatizes your brain into, like, you know, when you're driving, if you do something wrong, you almost get, like, a little tick goes off in your brain. People should learn to drive. There's not enough people that know actually how to drive, but there's too many people on the road.
But it's all good. Now I can drive by myself. I don't have to have him yelling at me. Coming soon, I'm going to share our trip to Bruges and Amsterdam. Even though it's been a couple years, I still have all that footage, and it was such a beautiful trip. Like, I really want to share it, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Yeah. So we'll share some of that and, like, our pros and cons about each place, because there were some pros and cons. Yeah. So we may have missed a few details here and there, but this video is probably so long. I think we should call it here. And if you guys have any more questions, maybe we can do a part 2 Q&A. Thank you for your support. Thank you for just everything. You guys are awesome. And talking to you in the comments is so fun. It's my favorite part about YouTube. We've been recording for over an hour and a half. Love you.
So yeah.
But thank you guys. We'll talk to you again soon. Hope you're all doing well. This is our warm-up. Most of this won't be in the video, so we'll just warm up and get... I don't know why. It's so weird. Baby!
I'm Sean.
Baby. Tell him a little more.
I'm Scottish.
Start over.
What do you want?
Like, say, hey, I'm Sean. I grew up in Aberdeen and Glasgow and Ireland. Who are you? So on YouTube,
people have asked the questions about us, so they know us.
On YouTube, you should assume like 99% of your viewers have never seen your channel before and don't know you. I gave him my card, and by the time, and so I got, or no, when you, so I gave him my card.
And then there was...
No.
And of course...
I'm almost got it.
And one time...
So...
But then...
And so I took him all around Denver to all the places everyone wants to see. And we just hung out a ton. He met my friends. My dad flew in and met you.
Was that in May?
Yeah.
That wasn't in May, was it?
That was the only time.
Second time, wasn't it? Second time I came over to America.
You came over 2 times?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
When?
So we were just like, yeah.
I totally forgot that. I thought it was all one trip. I'm sorry. I thought it was all one trip. Oh my god, I have to pause and figure this out.